All right. Well, hey, Innovate. Welcome to Let's Make a Deal with Drew and Jimmy. I'm Drew Sutton, as you know, and this is
Jimmy Newson.
Jimmy Newson. We're here to talk. How do you make a deal at a conference? So, Innovate's amazing. We put a huge amount of energy into bringing just the world class people that you can't meet, diamonds in the rough, people that are busy doing real stuff but don't get out there as much as they should, and to connect us all together. But it doesn't matter if we don't figure out how to actually make a deal happen. So, we're talking, it's probably about a 5-part series. What are different ways you can make a deal work so that everybody understands the verbiage and the language and the stakes at play, so we can get into a deal faster? If we all have the same language, I think we'll understand what each other is saying. So without further ado, I think we can run through these next type pretty quick. First one is a podcast. The primary reason I run a podcast is because it's a McGuffin. Have you heard the phrase McGuffin before?
No, not really. No, I know McStuffin.
Well, kind of. So Alfred Hitchcock coined the phrase, and he's directing movies and stuff. And he said every good movie has a MacGuffin. And they said, "What's a MacGuffin?" He goes, "A MacGuffin is, you watch the Maltese Falcon, which is this great 1930s crime drama, right? And they're all in the hunt for the Maltese Falcon, this statue, it's priceless heirloom. There's like car chases, there's kidnappings, there's a couple of murders, there's definitely some fist fights. At the very end of the movie, after like somebody's dying in a burning ship, they get the Maltese Falcon out and it's a fake. So the whole movie has been driven by this thing that's not even real. And so for me, the podcast, I'm not saying that my podcast isn't real, but it kind of serves as a MacGuffin. Like, so I've had a virtual conversation with somebody. I like them. I think that it would be cool to attach my name. Like, I'm cool with sharing my reputation with them. I'd like to give them something of value, but we haven't reached like, hey, let's do a project together yet. The podcast is this simple MacGuffin that I'm like, hey, let's do a podcast together. And everybody's excited about it. And so I get on there, we have an hour conversation. I generate some content for you. I give you the videos. So you're getting value. Your audience is getting value. My audience is getting value. The triple win is happening. But it's also kind of like, it doesn't matter. Like, if we do a bad podcast, it's just a bad podcast. It doesn't matter. So the podcast for me is this like little MacGuffin where we can go, blah, blah. Do we like working together? Did you show up on time? Did you do your homework? Did we have a good conversation? Did you serve my audience? So it's a little test. It's not even a project. It's just like this little blip. Anyway, I think everybody should consider doing podcasts, not for audience, but rather just for fit, to give somebody that you might want to partner with some value, and then to see what it looks like to work on a micro project together.
Absolutely. And this is, I have a podcast. I don't promote it as much, and we'll probably do more with it in the next 12 months. And my journey into podcasting was a little bit different. And again, this is where, to me, everything is dictated by strategy. So the question becomes, everybody goes, yeah, you need to do a podcast. The question should be two questions. Why? And and how does it serve my strategy? The overall strategy of my business, my organization. So when I created our podcast, which is the Impact Us All Business Podcast, it wasn't geared towards our audience. I mean, the message is geared toward our audience.
The content.
The guests are not our audience. For us, I had a bit of a problem. I happen to be I happen to be aligned with organizations that would never be my client because they're too big.
Right.
And because of my relationship with event planners and producers and me being a speaker, I'm constantly I'm actually on stage with them all the time. So I'm like, this is such a great opportunity. I have no way I don't know how to leverage.
Right.
And then one day it hit me. I'm like, now I know what my podcast should be about. And I just skipped over a whole bunch of stuff just to get to that statement. But at the end of the day, I said, again, it goes back to who do I serve? Small businesses. And I go, so what would be the ideal tie between these massive organizations and my small businesses? And I go, there has to be a reason why that particular major organization would, do they automatically already care about my small business users? And if they do, now what do we do about that? And so we ended up with the Impact Us All podcast, because I'm like, if they're trying to make impact is that impact going to benefit the small businesses? And if the answer is yes, now I want them on my podcast. So I do it to build a better relationship with them. Then I can figure out how to work with them because I get to be extremely intimate with them.
Yes, and it's that initial touch. So you met them on the stage, and you don't know what the project is going to be yet. And a podcast is a great kind of neutral middle ground. It's not a heavy lift. They are excited to be on one. You're excited to do it. It adds to both of your credibility a little bit, but it's just a little micro project. Yeah, I think a podcast, if you don't have one, I know I'm just kind of talking to the audience now.
Yep,
If
absolutely.
you don't have a podcast, talk to Joseph Lewin. He will get you set up for and take his full training course. It is not expensive. Hint, Joseph, charge other people more. Not me, by the way. But no, it's dude, you get yourself a short podcast stadium. It's not expensive to set up. And it is a great relationship builder. Super great relationship builder. All right. Any other thoughts on a podcast?
No, that's it. I mean, it's a great if it fits your strategy and your narrative, you should definitely be doing it because it is, when you talk about the era of technology and digital content, you can ride the podcast content train all day.
I literally had a nonprofit interview me out of the blue, called me up and they're like, would you like to be our CEO? And I was like, I will not give you $10,000 if you're a prince in Egypt. Like, I was like, is this a scam? What is going on here? And no, I looked them up and I had some friends and no, it was a legitimate offer. And I went through the interview process. It wasn't a perfect fit. But the point I'm making is it's because I was doing my podcast. They said, we saw your podcast. We love your podcast. Then I was also doing a leadership event at the same time. Like that media presence, which was not expressly built to get me a job or to really build audience. It was just Drew's out here doing good stuff. Do you want to be involved? And I got an offer to interview for a CEO position. So you got to get out there, do a podcast. That's it. Then the second one is when you meet somebody, they have a podcast. I don't know, it's kind of weird to be like, hey, can I be on your podcast? But don't be afraid. You don't have because you don't ask. If there's an affinity and they do a podcast, a simple statement like, be like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. I'd love to be on a podcast is all the invitation. If the other person wants you on the podcast and you just say, I'd love to be on a podcast, that's enough invitation if they're willing to do a small partnership deal with you.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that real quick. And this is where that research now can become a thing. I'm at a position now where I realize I have to be clear about the podcast that either I appear on or that I decide to invite someone on to mine because we don't advertise our podcast. We have about 20 episodes, so it's still relatively new. But we're not promoting it because we're handpicking the people. And it's because that particular strategy, like we're looking for specific people that can serve our audience. And then we're getting pitches all the time. Hey, I think I'd be a great person to be on your podcast. And they're not wrong. They just may not be right now. And I have to explain that to them. But let's say we're at a conference, and just like the Innovate Summit, which was an amazing conference where you might just want to jump on everybody's podcast. My thing is I need to listen to the podcast now because I got to make sure that I'm a good fit. I'm on a platform called matchmaker.fm. And so now I'm getting pitched constantly to be a guest, which is what I wanted to. But now I have the ability to look at the podcast. And then there was a gentleman, he was like, hey, I think you'd be great for our podcast. And, all you have to do is, and I read their podcast, and their podcast is about real estate and Bitcoin. I don't do either. That is not my thing.
Right.
Couldn't care less about it. And the guy, and I go, thanks a lot for the invite. Don't do Bitcoin. Don't do real estate. I know them, but I don't do them. I can't speak authoritatively on it. I don't, I'm definitely that guy that goes, oh, that's an interesting fact. And it could be the basic fact as ever. Right. And I told him that, and his response was, that's okay. You can speak about it just a little bit. And I refuse to do that. I'm like, I am an expert at what I do. And anything that makes me not look like an expert will damage my credibility. Period. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought me down this road. being a podcast guest. So if you come on my show, I have a series of 6 videos that I send to everybody, and I talk.
Mhm.
This is how you set up basic lighting. This is how you. But there's 2 videos on this is how you speak, because I got a mentor when I was in college. He said we're all a single string guitar. Sometimes we play it at. Let me find my hands here. Sometimes we play it here, and sometimes we play it here, and sometimes we play it here. But we all got 1 or 2 messages, 1 or 2 things that we're an expert at, and it's our job to stay focused on what we're an expert at. And so, going on a podcast that you're not an expert at, and then like for me, going to talk about spelling would be the worst thing in the world, right? Or interior color choices. That is the wrong podcast for Drew.
Mhm.
And you don't want to show up looking like a fool on a thing that you knew you were a fool at just to get out there.
Mm-mm.
Um, and you watch politicians, love them or hate them, the orange guy or the old guy or the lady that's all of them. They do a pretty good job. The moderator says, "What do you think about the rising healthcare prices?" And they go, Dan, I'm glad you asked that question. What I'd like to talk about is, and they just hit a talking point. Now, I think we're all a little bit irritated by that, so don't be that guy. But what they're illustrating is I came here to talk about 6 things, 3 things, whatever. I got my stump points. This is what I'm known for. This is what I'm good at. This is what people pay for. Stay on topic, man. You can deviate a little bit and be like, man, Dan, I'm glad you asked that question. I really like to talk about my new tax policy. And then I pull it back to your expertise. And you want to be on a podcast where that makes sense and it seems natural, so that you shine, so that that client that needs you hears you for the first time and says, I need more of him, because you're going to serve that person once you start connecting.
Absolutely, definitely. So what I'm really trying to get at as well with this whole thing is, the saying goes, um, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Okay.
Yeah, so true.
And what this gentleman didn't understand was I'm very clear on my vision. I'm very clear on my path, my direction, and all he cared about was his show and having me on it. He wanted
Right.
my name on that show because he saw all the stuff other stuff I was doing. So it
Yeah.
didn't matter to him if
It
I
really
wasn't a
good.
good fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to own your brand. You have to own your structure, because again, it affects my how I'm going to be perceived through partnerships. Like I want to share this to my partners. I want to share this to my potential clients. I want to share this to my existing clients. And I can't be looking like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I accidentally say something that is not true and it's on video
Forever.
forever.
Yeah.
And it's hard to walk that back.
I had a lady that I was trying to do a partnership with, heavy partnership with. We had a lot of affinities in a lot of areas. And she had done a sex talk podcast, like radio show, for like 4 or 5 years, like 15 years ago. But it's like still kind of, if you knew her, it comes up in the search, right?
Hmm.
And I tried to underplay that, but ultimately that was a big piece. I was like, every time we go to corporate and we offer to do some leadership training, they're going to research us. And then there's going to be this pretty intense section of her past. And I was willing to overlook it because we were friends.
Hmm.
And she was like, she doesn't come across that way she's very good at compartmentalizing, but she also wasn't willing to completely distance herself from that brand. Like that was still part of her persona. And you talk about no's. I should have been firmer on that earlier. I wasted a lot of time pretending. I'm like, well, I mean, it is kind of, we could get over it. No, there's not enough time to get over something. It's not an alignment. It's not alignment. And that's
Absolutely.
not, and I'm not saying she's a bad person. I think she's a fantastic person. I'm still a huge fan, champion her all the way. I didn't want to mix my brand. It
Yeah.
is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So you gotta. Yeah. So it's the moral of the story is very clear on who you are, what you do, where you're going, and what a great strategic partnership should look like. So you're able to align these and go. And again, you got your values, and I didn't take a lot of stock in values at all, until one of my board advisors, who's also become a great mentor for me, really gave me a stern understanding of what values really were and how you really stand on them. And I was like, oh wow, this is crazy, because it allows you to, it's another compass on helping you make better decisions and getting to decision making yeses and nos faster.
Yeah. Okay, let's do another couple sets here. I'm going to turn this one mostly over to you, Jimmy, because I love your views on it.